Welcome to Mythos AI, your source for Cliff's Notes on complex subjects. Join Anna and Phil for yet another engaging conversation.
Welcome to our deep dive into the influence and controversies surrounding Joe Rogan in 2024.
Yeah, it's been quite a year for him, hasn't it?
It really has.
A real roller coaster.
For listeners who might not be totally up to speed, can we start with a little overview of his career?
Oh, absolutely. Joe Rogan is a fascinating guy, really. He's done it all. I mean, he started out as a martial arts champion.
Right. I remember seeing him on TV doing Taekwondo.
That's him. Then he moved into stand-up comedy.
Oh, yeah, I've seen some of his stand-up.
He's really good, and from there, he even got into acting.
He was on that sitcom News Radio, wasn't he?
That's right. He played Joe Gorelli, the electrician, and then, of course, he became this huge voice in the UFC as a color commentator.
So all of that really laid the groundwork for the Joe Rogan experience, which, if I'm remembering correctly, launched in 2009.
That's right. It started out pretty informal.
Very casual.
Just Rogan and his friend comedian Brian Redband, just two guys chatting about whatever.
Whatever popped into their heads.
Comedy, martial arts, life's little quirks, you know?
But it really took off.
It did, and it's interesting to think about why,
Well, it seems like he really tapped into this desire for those long-form conversations.
Oh, absolutely.
Where guests could really dive deep into their perspectives.
Exactly, without the time constraints of traditional media.
And he wasn't afraid to have guests from all different walks of life, even controversial figures.
And that really added to the show's appeal.
It made it unpredictable, exciting.
That commitment to open dialogue, to platforming unconventional viewpoints became a defining characteristic of the show.
And that combined with his just genuine curiosity and ability to connect with people.
He's a good interviewer.
He is.
He really gets people to open up.
Made the show a global phenomenon.
It's one of the most popular podcasts in the world.
And by 2020, it was so popular that Spotify offered him that huge exclusive licensing deal.
$100 million, reportedly.
It was really a turning point for podcasting.
It showed that podcasting could be big business.
It put podcasting on the map.
And it solidified Rogan's position as a real leader in this new media landscape.
But then in 2024, he stepped away from that exclusivity.
That's right. He restructured the deal with Spotify to allow for wider distribution.
It seemed like a strategic move.
He was prioritizing reach above all else.
By not limiting himself to just one platform, he could connect with a larger, more diverse audience.
Exactly. He was breaking free from those constraints.
Maintaining control over his content.
And connecting directly with his listeners.
Now, to really understand Rogan's influence, we need to delve into some of the most controversial episodes that aired in 2024.
And there were quite a few.
Starting with the episode featuring Elon Musk in November of that year.
Oh, that was a big one.
It was.
Musk and Rogan really went after ABC chair Kim Williams.
She had accused Rogan of spreading misinformation.
And Musk compared ABC to Russian state media.
Which, of course, caused an uproar.
It was a powder keg.
It really sparked a debate about media bias, journalistic ethics, and the power dynamics between these tech giants and traditional media institutions.
It was a perfect example of how Rogan's platform could amplify these already heated discussions.
And push them further into the public consciousness.
But it wasn't just media criticism. They also talked about AI and the future of technology.
Musk talked about regulatory constraints hindering innovation in the U.S.
Which resonated with a lot of people in the tech world.
But those comments also drew criticism from people who believe in the importance of ethics.
And the role of regulation.
Especially when dealing with potentially risky new technologies.
That episode really highlighted how Rogan's podcast can serve as a battleground for these complex debates.
Often without clear answers or resolutions.
It forces listeners to grapple with different perspectives.
Going to think critically.
About the information being presented.
Then there was the episode with Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Oh, that was another controversial one.
Kennedy's become a really polarizing figure because of his views on vaccines.
Right.
And he reiterated those views on Rogan's show.
Specifically, he expressed concerns about the safety of vaccines.
Which prompted Rogan to challenge Dr. Peter Hotez to a debate.
Hotez is a prominent vaccine advocate.
And that challenge ignited this whole online debate about misinformation.
And the ethics of platforming controversial figures without providing counterbalance.
Critics argued that Rogan was giving a voice to unsubstantiated claims and normalizing dangerous misinformation.
And that it could potentially endanger public health.
It exposed this tension within Rogan's platform.
On one hand, he champions open dialogue and free speech,
believing that all views should be heard.
But critics argue that this approach can inadvertently legitimize harmful misinformation.
especially when those views aren't challenged.
It raises serious questions about Rogan's responsibility as a host.
And the potential consequences of amplifying views that contradict scientific consensus.
Or that could be harmful to public health. To really grasp the controversy, we need to understand the specifics of what Kennedy was saying.
Right.
He repeated this theory, linking the MMR vaccine to autism.
Which has been debunked.
Countless times by countless scientific studies.
Yet it persists.
It does, often fueled by people like Kennedy who have a platform.
And a loyal following.
Exactly. So by giving him that space, without challenging those claims or presenting counter-evidence, Rogan inadvertently contributed to the spread of this misinformation.
It gets back to those ethical considerations.
Right.
Open dialogue is great, but when it comes to public health, there's a line.
Absolutely. You can't just give a platform to potentially dangerous misinformation.
Then there's the episode with Mark Andreessen.
Ah, yes, the venture capitalist.
He focused on this idea of debanking.
Which is this idea that tech and crypto startup founders are being targeted
By who?
by the government, by the Biden administration.
Oh, wow.
Andreessen claimed that over 30 founders have been targeted.
Really?
He even compared it to Operation Choke Point.
What was that?
It was a program during the Obama administration that aimed to cut off financial services to businesses considered high risk.
So Andreessen is arguing that similar tactics are being used now to silence dissenting voices.
Especially those critical of the government.
But did he have any evidence?
That's the problem. He offered speculation anecdotes, but no hard proof.
So it was just conjecture.
Exactly, and that's where it becomes dangerous. Without evidence, these claims just fuel conspiracy theories.
And further erode trust in institutions.
Precisely. And again, Rogan didn't really challenge him.
So those claims were amplified.
To a massive audience.
Let's move on to the controversy surrounding Rogan's comments about the war in Ukraine.
Oh yeah, this one got a lot of attention.
Ukrainian boxer Vladimir Klitschko accused Rogan of spreading Russian propaganda,
It stemmed from Rogan's commentary on U.S. and Ukrainian actions.
which he saw as escalating the conflict.
Right. He specifically mentioned Biden's authorization for Ukraine to use those long-range missiles.
The ones supplied by the U.S.
Right. Rogan suggested that this could lead to a wider war.
And Klitschko argued that this viewpoint aligned with Russian narratives
The ones that downplay Russia's aggression?
and shift blame onto Ukraine.
Exactly.
And then there was Rogan's refusal to host Zelensky.
The Ukrainian
Rogan said he didn't want to appear biased.
But that decision backfired.
People accused him of creating a false equivalency.
Between an aggressor nation and a nation defending itself.
Critics said that by not giving Zelensky a platform, he was silencing a key voice.
The voice of the Ukrainian people.
It put Rogan in a tough spot,
He's not a journalist.
so he doesn't have the same obligations.
But his influence is undeniable.
And his choices have real-world consequences.
In this case, his comments and his decision not to host Zelensky created the impression that he was taking sides.
What about his interviews with Trump and Harris?
Those were quite revealing.
The Trump interview was huge.
It was his first time having Trump on the show.
They talked about everything.
Trump's campaign, his views on the media, his claims about the 2020 election.
Millions of
It
views,
showed Rogan's power.
his relevance in the political landscape.
But it also brought up those concerns about misinformation again,
People criticized Rogan for not pushing back on Trump's election claims.
letting them go unchecked.
It highlighted the challenges of Rogan's interview style,
It's conversational, not confrontational.
which is great for getting guests to open up
But it can also allow misinformation to spread.
if it's not challenged,
And then Rogan endorsed Trump.
further cementing his influence in the political world,
It solidified his position as a voice on the right.
aligning himself with a certain segment of the population.
Now, Harris, on the other hand, declined Rogan's invitation.
Why was that?
They disagreed on the format.
Rogan wanted his standard long-form in-person discussion.
Harris's team wanted a shorter remote session.
They were probably concerned about sound bites.
And the potential for things to be taken out of context.
It was a missed opportunity for both of them.
Harris missed a chance to connect with Rogan's audience.
And Rogan missed a chance to engage with someone from the other side of the political spectrum.
It shows how hard it is to navigate this fragmented media landscape. It's important to step back and look at the bigger picture.
Right.
What's Rogan's overall impact on the media landscape?
On free speech, on political discourse.
He's a unique figure.
He really is.
Blurs the lines between traditional journalism, entertainment, social commentary.
He's been praised and criticized
Yeah.
for his willingness to platform diverse voices.
Including those considered fringe or controversial.
His supporters applaud his commitment to open dialogue,
His skepticism of mainstream narratives
but his critics worry that he legitimizes misinformation.
gives a platform to dangerous ideas.
It's complicated. There are no easy answers.
That's for sure.
On the one hand, he's fostered some really important conversations,
Oh, absolutely.
challenged conventional wisdom,
Pushed boundaries.
given a voice to people and perspectives we don't often hear in the mainstream media.
He's contributed to a more diverse and vibrant public discourse.
But on the other hand, there's that lack of editorial oversight.
The fact-checking.
So misinformation can spread.
And when it's about things like public health or international conflicts, the consequences can be serious.
The controversies we've talked about,
Musk, Kennedy, and Zelensky.
they all highlight this tension within his platform.
Free speech versus potentially amplifying harmful narratives.
And his audience keeps growing.
Which means his responsibility grows, too.
The decisions he makes have ripple effects.
Far beyond his studio.
Another interesting aspect of Rogan's influence is his ability to connect with a specific segment of the population.
Often white male, disillusioned with mainstream institutions.
His conversations about masculinity, political ideology, societal shifts,
They resonate deeply with this audience
tapping into anxieties and frustrations.
that aren't often addressed in traditional media.
These episodes, while popular,
Very popular.
also contribute to the perception of his platform as a space where traditional values are reinforced,
And anxieties about societal change are validated.
which can be good and bad,
Yeah, it can create a sense of community
but it can also reinforce divisions.
and contribute to polarization.
Then there's the question of accountability.
Unlike journalists who are bound by ethical codes,
Rogan has a lot more freedom,
which is great for exploring topics without constraints.
but it also means he's not subject to the same scrutiny.
The same accountability.
And that's at the heart of a lot of these controversies.
When misinformation is presented without challenge, it can gain traction.
And potentially influence people in harmful ways.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we're left with a big question.
What is Joe Rogan's legacy?
Will he be remembered as a pioneer?
Someone who revolutionized media,
Expanded the boundaries of free speech
or as someone who contributed to the spread of misinformation?
and the polarization of society.
Only time will tell.
But one thing's for sure,
His influence is undeniable.
and his impact will continue to be debated.
For years to come.
Thanks for listening to Mythos AI. Stay tuned for more concise insights. And remember to hit the like button and subscribe for future episodes.